Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 291, Gonna Rule the School. The episode begins with Ash and the gang having finally arrived in Rustboro City. It's only been 15 goddamn episodes. The first thing they all saw when they first came into Rustboro was one of the city's main attractions, being a giant observation tower, which gave anyone who went inside a view of the entire city. And May, Max, and Brock certainly saw this was true, as they were really enjoying the view of Rustboro from the observation tower. May, Brock, and Max's attention was then directed away from the view of the city, as they were called by none other than Ash, who showed up, appearing behind them. Why wasn't he there in the first place? Well, he had been busy buying a whole bunch of Rustboro City souvenirs, and now that was clearly showing, as he had on a ridiculous outfit filled with souvenir pins and flags and shit like that, along with those weird-ass green glasses. Max, May, Brock, and even Pikachu were immensely shocked by Ash's appearance, as he always wore the same fucking thing. And that outfit was always plain as fuck, while this one was immensely attention-grabbing. As Ash began to explain how he got all these tourist items for free due to them being tourists, Max and May commented on how weird Ash looked, although Ash first took this as a compliment, wanting to stand out. He soon realized, though, that his friends didn't think that standing out was that good of an idea, as they were embarrassed by him as they proceeded to head down the tower, just trying to stay ahead of him and not be associated with him. Ash tried to apologize to his friends for embarrassing them with his souvenirs, stating he was only doing it to try and be funny because he thought that all the souvenirs looked weird. But just as Ash was trying to apologize, Max got distracted as he spotted a lone Poliwag underneath a bench. Max noticed that it looked pretty scared, as it was kind of squirming around underneath the bench, so Max asked why it was there and why it seemed scared, which only frightened the Poliwag more, not used to strangers. However, Max assured the Poliwag that he didn't mean it any harm, and this calmed the Poliwag down a bit, as it slowly came out from underneath the bench. With Poliwag now calmed down, Max picked it up to examine it, and Ash, May, and Brock examined it as well. Upon the examination, they all found that the Poliwag had a strange ribbon on its tail that had a Pokeball design on it. Just then, a woman ran up to Ash and the gang and excitedly exclaimed that she'd been looking for Poliwag and asks Max if he was the one who initially found it, leading Max to confirm and the woman to thank him. Suddenly, we then hear three little kids calling out for their teacher, Miss Roxanne, and they come up to the woman, revealing the woman as Roxanne. They had been calling to see if Roxanne had managed to find the Poliwag and were overjoyed when they saw that she had, as she now had the Poliwag in her hands. A girl with a Pidgey excitedly tries to talk to a blue-haired boy about how his Poliwag had been found and nothing bad had happened to it, assuming that this would quell the very, very nervous state that the blue-haired boy was in. However, the blue-haired boy still seemed nervous. Ash and the gang, realizing that the Poliwag must have belonged to the blue-haired boy, questioned why he was so bent out of shape at getting his Pokemon back, leading Roxanne to clarify that the blue-haired boy's name was Kenny, and he was afraid of touching Pokemon, including his own. It's then that she also reveals that she was a teacher at a local Pokemon school, and Kenny, along with the two other kids there, were her students, being part of her beginner's class, a group of students Max's age. Also stating that they were on a field trip to this observation tower, and that was when the Poliwag went missing. The third kid, who was a boy with a Megby, really wanted to enjoy his field trip, and he felt that with Poliwag going missing, the field trip had been ruined, and he solely blamed Kenny for ruining the field trip, claiming that it was all Kenny's fault for letting his Poliwag run away. Also stating that someone who didn't even like to touch Pokemon such as Kenny didn't even deserve Poliwag. The girl with a Pidgey, named Anita, then butted in, arguing with the boy with the Megby, whose name was Tommy, that it actually wasn't all Kenny's fault, trying to defend him from Tommy's rudeness. Roxanne breaks up Tommy and Anita's argument by stating that, although she agreed somewhat with Tommy, that Kenny should learn to not be afraid to touch Pokemon, aimless fighting would get them absolutely nowhere, ordering them to stop. Since the kids were so enamored by Roxanne being impressed by their teacher, they stopped fighting, just as she had requested. She then states that they should all head back to the trainer school now, since they had pretty much seen everything at the observatory. Upon hearing yet another mention of the trainer school, Ash and the gang became somewhat intrigued by what it was, leading Roxanne to reveal that it was an educational place where younger children specifically could learn about Pokemon, and this obviously excited Max, pleading with May that she let him go to the school and the rest of the gang all come along with him. Before May could respond, it was Ash who denied Max's request, stating that he had something more important to do, and something more important that the entire gang should watch, being his gym battle. Roxanne, for some reason, was extremely shocked upon hearing this, although she was excited, asking if Ash really intended to challenge the Rustboro gym, with Ash confirming this and stating that May was going to challenge the gym as well. This led May to laugh nervously, still hesitant to admit that she now didn't really have much desire to participate in gyms, but rather contests. Roxanne then revealed that the reason why she was so excited to hear that Ash and May were challengers was because her trainer school had been going for many, many years and had trained many kids over the years that had went on to challenge the Rustboro gym leader. So therefore, based on everything that her students have told her, she had learned a lot about the gym leader, and also came to the conclusion that since a lot of her alumni from her school were successful at beating the gym leader, that coming to her school would be very beneficial for Ash and the gang. Especially Ash, since he was going to, partake in the battle. So essentially, she was excited because it meant that she could give some people a tour around her school. Ash was hesitant to go, wanting to go straight to the gym like before, but Roxanne assured Ash that the school was right beside the gym anyways, so he could just quickly go to the school and then go to the gym right after. Ash was still hesitant, but Brock was on the same page as Roxanne, stating that if a lot of trainers that had trained at the trainer school were able to beat the Rustboro gym leader, then Ash getting some training at the school probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Ash's opinion didn't even fucking matter at this point, as Max was just too excited to go to the school and basically forced everyone else to. Immediately upon their entry to the school, Ash and the gang were separated from Roxanne and her students, as they were instead greeted by the school's principal so that he could give them a tour of the school, so that he could show them all their options for classes that they could attend. However, during the tour, all Ash could think about was battling the gym leader, and he continued to plead to get out of this tour, even as the principal took them to their first destination, a room where a Pokemon doctor was giving a lecture advising kids on how they could eventually become Pokemon doctors. And of course, Nurse Joy happened to be the co-teacher of the class, because was there really a better doctor in the Pokemon world aside from any Nurse Joy? I doubt it. Ash wasn't interested in this class whatsoever, as he simply just continued to complain about not being able to go straight for the gym battle, although Brock was somewhat intrigued by this class, because a Pokemon doctor was somewhat similar to a Pokemon breeder, because they both had to care for Pokemon. The next class that the principal took Ash and the gang to was a contest class where trainers could choose to train their Pokemon for contests, which of course made May really eager to sign up for the class, especially as she saw a trainer send out a Sneasel to show off its beauty, and May became very impressed by the Sneasel, seeing that it had a contest ribbon on it, signifying that it had won a contest. May was then even more impressed as she saw several other Pokemon practicing for contests, including a Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Wartortle, Caterpie, Metapod, Weedle, Beedrill, Rattata, Arbok, Sandshrew, Nidoran, Jigglypuff, Oddish, Venonat, Psyduck, Bellsprout, Weepinbell, Shelter, Voltorb, Cubone, Hitmontop, Staryu, Scyther, and I know I'm doing the Poké Rap right now, Ditto, Eevee, Sentret, Houndoom, Hoothoot, Blossom, Marill, Hoppip, Jumpluff, Sunflora, Wooper, Teddiursa, Swinub, Smeargle, Smoochum, Elekid, Mudkip, Poliwhirl, Skiploom, and Corsola. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was a trainer school. Of course there was going to be lots of trainers with lots of different Pokemon. What do you expect? This wasn't even all the Pokemon in the school, as the principal, seeing that May and Brock found classes they were interested in, found a class that he believed Ash would be interested in due to his want to challenge the gym leader, being the battling class, in which a trainer was currently battling its Feraligatr against another trainer and their Typhlosion. Just as the principal expected, Ash was very intrigued by this class, and Ash, May, and Brock were all happy with finding classes that they were interested in. However, Max was not happy, as he realized that there was no classes that he could attend, as all the trainers that were in these classes were Ash, Brock, and May's age, not his age. So he asked if there was any classes that where he could attend, remembering that Roxanne had students that were his age, leading the principal to admit nervously that he had forgot about Max, but assured him that there was in fact a class for little kids, being the beginner's class that Roxanne taught. And he then took Ash and the gang there to check it out. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were back in the Rustboro observation tower, and they came up with a plan to try and steal some of the souvenirs from the souvenir shop in the observation tower and then resell them at their own stand, preferably in a Team Rocket base that they could set up in Rustboro City, because, they were still trying to do that per Giovanni's orders. They then proceeded to have a daydream of their completed base and them getting rich from all the souvenirs they would sell. We then go back to Ash and the gang as the principal led them all inside Roxanne's room where she was teaching the beginner class. However, much to Ash and the gang's surprise, Roxanne was merely standing to the side, watching, as her students were actually being lectured by none other than Professor Oak over a video screen. Upon seeing Professor Oak, Max was left speechless at seeing the person that he looked up to the most for the first time, even if it was just over a video call. Max was left even more speechless, if that was even possible, as Oak noticed Ash and the gang and greeted them, and looked down to Max at last after greeting May, Brock, and Ash, and said that he knew about Max because Ash had told him about him, and Max was extremely overjoyed at this, although was embarrassed because he was stressing that Ash may have said some embarrassing things about him over his calls with Oak, and this caused May to laugh at how embarrassed Max was as she teased him and patted him on the head. She then tries to get Max even more embarrassed as she goes on and on about how much Max knew about Pokemon, which impressed Oak. Oak then expressed his surprise at Ash and the gang even being inside this room, questioning if that meant that Ash had met the gym leader yet and had a battle with her yet, asking if he or Roxanne had won the gym battle, calling Roxanne the teacher of the class. Roxanne then jumped in before Ash could answer, admitting that they hadn't had time to battle yet, which made Ash realize that Roxanne was actually the Rustboro gym leader. Whoa, no way. Roxanne confirms this, laughing at how shocked Ash was, as the principal then jumps in and admits that not only was Roxanne currently a teacher at the school, she was a alumni of the school and was his finest student, and added that she was able to be promoted from student to teacher due to how great of a battler she was and how great of a teacher she was when it came to teaching Pokemon training, stating that she was essentially a prodigy. Hearing how good Roxanne was, this just made Ash even more motivated to battle her, but unfortunately, Roxanne requested that they postpone the battle for 2 days, since she was apparently really busy teaching her students. Ash, not wanting to lose the opportunity to battle her at all, accepted this, although of course he would have rather battled her right away. Just then, Oak stated that he couldn't teach this lecture anymore since he had some last-minute business to attend to and some last-minute research to do. So he said his goodbyes to Ash and the gang, Roxanne, and her students, but right as he was about to hang up, Max stopped him, admitting how he had read all of Oak's books, watched all of his TV shows, and listened to all of Oak's radio shows, stating that he was one of Oak's biggest fans, and claims that because of this, Professor Oak should reward him by teaching him all that he knew, so that Max could essentially become his apprentice. Oak was honored to have someone look up to him so much, but all he could do was chuckle at Max's enthusiasm towards him before hanging up, since he truly had somewhere else to be. Tommy, one of Roxanne's students from earlier, was kind of annoyed with Max's simping towards Oak, so decided to test him to see if he really knew a lot of what Oak had taught through his books and TV and radio shows. Max was startled by Tommy's sudden challenge and simply asked him what the questions in the challenge were going to involve, leading Tommy to state that it was going to be questions based on what attacks were good against certain types of Pokemon and also what type certain Pokemon were. Max agreed, wanting to prove his knowledge, so Tommy first asked what type of Pokemon Sunflora was, with Max answering that it was a grass type. The entire class was immensely shocked at the fact that Max had got the right answer, but Tommy thought that Max had just got it right as a fluke, so he then asked two questions about if water-type Pokemon were good against fire Pokemon, and if grass Pokemon were good against water Pokemon, and Max said yes to both questions, also adding in several examples, such as several grass types that were good against water types, and several water types that were good against fire types. All of the class was even more impressed with Max for this, which made Tommy jealous, as he angrily yelled at Max to try and scare him. However, Roxanne then stepped in and stopped the yelling, essentially reminding Tommy that students were supposed to learn together. And that was the goal of them attending the same class. They weren't supposed to compete over having more knowledge than one another. And also brings her point back up that fighting won't solve anything. The principal also echoes this sentiment, stating that Tommy should respect the school's rules, and not fighting was one of them. The principal then turns his attention away from Tommy and towards Max, as he asks him if he would like to be an honorary student to the school, knowing how much Max wanted to learn, and further enticing him by stating that Max would get his own Pokemon for the day if he joined. Max obviously wanted to stay, but he felt that he needed May's permission first, due to her always being put in charge by their parents, Caroline and Norman. May agreed, although she was somewhat concerned that Max would be able to handle being in the school environment, because he didn't have many friends. Anyways, Max was overjoyed and suggested that May should study at the school for the day as well, and use the knowledge at the school to study up for her upcoming gym battle with Roxanne, leading May to just nervously laugh again, not wanting to even think about having to do a gym battle, since she didn't want to anymore. Anyways, now that Max had officially enrolled for the day, Ash and the gang were led by Roxanne and the principal to the Pokeball room, where all of the school's Pokeballs were kept that could be rented. Max inquired as to what kinds of Pokemon were in the Pokeballs, and if they would only obey one trainer at a time, leading Roxanne to confirm that there were Pokemon of all types in the balls, and while it was true the Pokemon would only obey one trainer at a time, they were able to obey everyone, so long as they were picked at different times. Like, what I mean by this, so for example, if Max picked a Pokemon, it would listen to him, but then when he returned it to the shelf of Pokeballs, then if another trainer picked that same Pokemon, then it would obey them as well. But the Pokemon could only obey one trainer at a specific time. As Max gazed lovingly at all of the Pokeballs, Roxanne reminded him that he could only pick one Pokemon, so he should choose carefully. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were now just outside the school, managing to hear the conversation that was going on inside the Pokeball room. Jessie was the first one to point out that all of those Pokemon in the Pokeballs were just waiting to be stolen. James agreed. However, before the Team Rocket could start planning, Wobbuffet then forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, forcing Jessie to recall it. It was then that Jessie suggested that they not only steal all the Pokeballs, but they sell them to make a whole bunch of money, not give them to Giovanni, since she figured they could utilize the money to build them, like, a new mech or something, so that they could catch even more Pokemon for Giovanni. And Meowth agreed with this, hyped to get as much money as possible, since, he had come back from his vacation in the specials recently, and he was out of money due to being fired from his jobs, so yeah, he definitely wanted money. Anyways, back with Ash and the gang, it was decided that not only Max, but Ash, Brock, and May would take part in a day of classes starting tomorrow. So, Ash and the gang returned to the Pokemon Center for the night to get some rest for their big day tomorrow. However, before going to bed, Ash made sure to do some practicing with Pikachu so that they could try and master Iron Tail for their upcoming gym battle, as he had Pikachu try to slice through some small rocks with his tail. But Ash would throw at high speeds at Pikachu. Pikachu was able to successfully break the small rocks with his tail, but the broken pieces fell on his head. Ash wasn't happy with this, since he figured that Iron Tail should completely whack your opponent away, and the rocks clearly weren't being whacked far away enough if they were able to land on Pikachu's head. So he assured Pikachu that they would train until they master it, as he continued to throw rock after rock. The next morning, Ash, May, and Brock dropped Max off at his beginner class before going to their classes, as they watched from just outside the classroom to make sure Max was doing good. And they saw that as Max was trying to read a book of Pokemon knowledge, he was approached by a girl who pulled up a chair close to him, who introduced herself as Anita. Yeah, it was one of the girls from earlier. Or rather, the only girl from earlier, because there were two boys and one girl. The one with the Pidgey. Anita revealed that she came up to Max because she saw that he was a new student, so she wanted to give him a little bit of a walkthrough of what the class entailed and all that. Max, however, replied that he had already kind of figured it out and was ready to learn, stating his belief that Anita and all the other kids were extremely lucky to live in Rustboro City so that they could always learn more about Pokemon at the school. But Anita disagreed that they were lucky, stating that she, as well as the blue-haired student from earlier, Tommy, were actually not wanting to attend the school as they were forced to attend by their parents. Max inquired as to who this blue-haired boy was, so Anita pointed him out, and stated that although she didn't want to be at the school, and didn't really like learning about Pokemon that much, she cared about them enough to be able to touch them. Like, she wasn't completely, utterly opposed to them, but Kenny, on the other hand, was, because he got really nervous around them. And not only that, he had no confidence in his abilities as a future Pokemon trainer anyways, since he couldn't become comfortable with the Pokemon. She then said that his parents had always assured him that he would be able to not be afraid of Pokemon soon, since they apparently knew from experience that all kids were able to bond with Pokemon at a relatively early age, but Kenny had always remained unsure of this, referencing the fact how since he was so scared of Pokemon, he wasn't able to keep Poliwag around him for very long, or use it effectively in battle. Anita then admitted that although she herself didn't like learning about Pokemon that much either, she did wish that she and Tommy could share Max's enthusiasm for them, as she knew that basically everyone in the Pokemon world was interested in Pokemon to some extent, and she feared that they wouldn't be able to do well in the world if they didn't bond with them. Just then, Max and Anita's conversation was interrupted as Tommy came up to them, still holding his Magby, and also still mad at Max for proving him wrong and getting all those goddamn questions right. So mad that he bullied Max, warning him that he planned to learn even more than Max and show him up. Tommy then walks away, evil laughing, as Anita explains to Max that Tommy was often viewed as the best trainer in the class, so he felt very ashamed that he had been shown up. Though admitted that she liked Tommy being shown up since he was so full of himself. She then thanked Max for being the one to show Tommy up, stating that Max making Tommy angry due to answering all his questions was very funny and amusing to watch. Also admitting that Max showing up Tommy was one of the main reasons why she had even decided to sit beside Max in the first place, because she was impressed with him. Just then, Roxanne finally came into the room, ready to teach. Roxanne's first task that she assigned the kids for the day was to send out their rented Pokemon so that they could try and bond with them a little bit. Ash and Brock were observing this, intrigued as to what the class entailed, as May had ran off for her class, a contest class. While Ash was watching, he then noticed that May had left and wondered where she went, asking Brock, although obviously he had no clue either. We then see May arrive at the contest class, eager to listen to a lecture to learn more about being a Pokemon coordinator. And she certainly was, as the teacher of the class was instructing his Scyther to do some beautiful moves, which May was registering in her mind. However, May soon left the class when the teacher revealed that they were going to be having a pop quiz right this second. So May dashed out of the room and closed the door as fast as possible, also mad at herself that she had been missing Max's class in exchange for something like a potential pop quiz. Meanwhile, back at Max's class, Roxanne noticed Brock and Ash observing and stated that she believed that they should be her guest speakers to help the kids learn more about Pokemon while they bonded with their own. Ash and Brock happily obliged, as Ash sent out his Taillow and Trico, and Brock sent out his Fortress and Lotad. However, upon release, Brock noticed that his Lotad was sleeping, and he poked it to try and wake it up, and it ended up waking up, though it was very confused, not knowing where the fuck it was, which made all the students laugh their asses off, including Anita, while Max, on the other hand, was just concerned and embarrassed on behalf of Lotad. Roxanne didn't want the kids to all see Ash and Brock as laughingstocks. She wanted to see them as serious mentors for the time being, so she introduced Ash as a top 8 contender of the Johto League, and introduced Brock as the former gym leader of Pewter City, one of the world's first ever rock gyms, and one of the most well-known. Roxanne then noticed that Brock currently didn't have any rock Pokemon on hand with him, though, so she felt the need to assure the kids that Brock was a good rock-type trainer, as she admitted to Brock that she had been partially inspired by the Pewter Gym to create a rock-type gym herself and raise rock-type Pokemon of her own, stating that she had apparently heard of some of the battles that he had with his Onix and Geodude, and was very impressed by them. Roxanne then asked Brock so that the kids could learn, a question being why Brock had other types of Pokemon despite being a rock-type specialist, leading Brock to admit that having a team that was type diverse was very important. And further explained that finding Pokemon that had multiple types themselves as well could also help you out, referencing how his Lotad was a dual type, being both grass and water type. Brock then tries to impress the kids by telling his Lotad to use Water Gun. However, Lotad was still confused with its surroundings, so it just sat there, doing absolutely nothing. So Brock bent down by its face and pleaded it to use Water Gun so that it could impress the kids. And Lotad, seeing that Brock's face was right in front of him, obliged, but also sprayed Brock straight in the face, which did end up impressing the kids, since they found it funny and laughed immensely. While Brock was talking to the kids, Ash noticed that Kenny was standing all by himself without a Pokemon, so he went up to him to ask what was wrong, leading Kenny to just walk away farther into the back of the classroom, trying to ignore Ash. However, Ash came to the correct conclusion that Kenny appeared to be nervous around Pokemon, which was why he didn't have one of his own, so he walked up to Kenny again and introduced Pikachu to him. trying to convince Tommy that Pokemon weren't to be frightened of, and even the most stubborn of Pokemon could eventually be your friends, referencing his Pikachu, stating that he and Pikachu didn't start off as close friends, but now they were an unbeatable team. He then suggested that to get over his nerves of Pokemon, Kenny try and pet Pikachu. Although just then, Max showed up with the Pokemon he chose, a Poliwag. The same Poliwag that Kenny had walked up to Kenny and tried to cheer him up as well, since Max knew from Anita that Kenny was super uncomfortable around Pokemon, so he wanted to try and, cheer him up. Doing so by stating a whole bunch of Pikachu facts to Kenny, trying to make him enamored by the Pikachu. And although he wasn't, plenty of other kids were still enamored by Max in general, and how smart he was. And this, of course, made Tommy jealous once again at the attention that Max was receiving. So he came up with a scheme to try and make Max seem like a very bad potential trainer, as he pretended to lose his balance and step on Poliwag's tail, causing Poliwag to cry out in pain and angrily use a water gun. Though since the water gun was fired indiscriminately, it was heading towards Kenny as opposed to Tommy. And due to Poliwag being Max's responsibility, Max felt responsible for potentially saving Kenny, so he dove towards Kenny right as the water gun was about to make contact, pushing Kenny out of the way of the water gun, just in time, knowing that if Kenny got hit, then he would likely be even more scared of Pokemon. Tommy then insincerely apologized to Tommy, stating that he accidentally stepped on Poliwag's tail, and said that if Tommy was going to blame anyone, he should blame Max, and told this to the rest of the kids as well, stating that Max clearly couldn't be a good Pokemon trainer if he couldn't control his Pokemon, not to use water gun, regardless of any circumstances. Anita, however, having seen what actually happened, ignored that last part, and simply stated that Tommy was a liar. He had actually willingly stepped on Poliwag's tail. Max knew that Tommy had willingly stepped on Poliwag as well, so he accused him. However, Tommy remained adamant that he had just accidentally stepped on Poliwag. When all the other kids were debating who was telling the truth, Tommy took the opportunity to taunt Max by sticking his tongue out at him, being like, "Haha, people are gonna believe me, bitch," making Max angry. As for Roxanne, she also saw the argument going on, and decided to break it up by stating to the kids that it was now time for the beginner's class battle practicing. So, Roxanne took all the kids, as well as Ash and Brock, outside to the training battlefield, only to reveal that Tommy and Max were going to be the first pair to fight, so that they could work out their frustrations. Max and Tommy, of course, were eager to battle, so Roxanne pulled out a case of 6 Pokeballs, and clarified that each of them could only pick one Pokemon to battle with. She was just giving them choices. Just then, May arrived on the battlefield, standing beside Ash, Brock, and the kids, ready to finally watch Max. And Max went to go pick out a Pokeball, only for Tommy to pick that one first, so Max was forced to pick a different Pokemon. However, this actually worked in his favor, as once the battle began, Max and Tommy sent out their Pokemon, and Tommy sent out a Magby, coincidentally, while Max sent out a Poliwag, coincidentally, so both of the Pokemon that they had willingly chose before. Max was thrilled, as he had the type advantage, which Ash also pointed out, stating his belief that Max would win the battle easily. Max thought this as well. However, he made sure to think of a potential strategy to win the battle with, so that he didn't rely on just the type advantage. However, Max was taking so long to come up with a strategy that Tommy was able to go for the first attack, being a flamethrower. Poliwag was able to take the hit extremely well, though, as it used Defense Curl to block a lot of the damage. Tommy merely had his Magby use yet another flamethrower, leading Max to order Poliwag to use Belly Drum. Poliwag does lose a bit of health from this attack, using it on itself, but this also, in turn, increased its attack power and its defense power. Ash questioned what Max was doing, though, as, despite having increased attack power, Max was only relying on the defense, as when Magby went in for another flamethrower, Poliwag just used another defense curl. Obviously, Max couldn't win with just defensive moves, so even with all these defense curls, Magby's flamethrower, that it had now used like 10 times by this point, with a defense curl meeting every single flamethrower, the flamethrowers were still able to do a decent bit of damage, because, defensive moves couldn't fully protect you forever. Seeing how bad of a shape Poliwag was in, Ash tried to warn Max to actually do some fucking attacking, but before Max could do anything, and before even one last flamethrower from Magby could make contact, the alarm bell of the school then sounded. While this alarm was sounding, the principal then came running out of the school to go alarm everyone that all the Pokeballs had been stolen from the Pokeball room, and that was obviously why the burglary alarm was going off. It was then revealed who had stolen the Pokeballs, as Team Rocket then crashed through the school fence in a gigantic Wurmple mech that had a huge bag attached to it that had all the Pokeballs inside. Soon enough, Team Rocket emerged from their Wurmple mech and did their motto, stating their already successful plan of stealing all the Pokeballs in the school. Ash demanded that Team Rocket give the Pokeballs back, but Team Rocket being Team Rocket refused, so Ash tried to forcibly remove the bag from the Wurmple mech's tail by using Thunderbolt, hoping to destroy the mech as well, but Team Rocket simply laughed, taunting Ash, as they simply closed the doors to their cockpit, and the mech was unaffected since it was electric-proof. Pikachu tried several more Thunderbolts, just causing Team Rocket to laugh even harder, as each one failed to penetrate the Wurmple robot. Brock then tries to help by sending out his Fortress and having it use Tackle, but Jessie just sends out her Seviper and has it use Poison Tail on Fortress to knock it back. This leads May to then send in her Wurmple, as she has it try to use String Shot to deal with Seviper and then go for the mech. However, James then sent out his Cacnea and had it use Pin Missile to tear the string to literal threads, so it couldn't do anything. Jessie then decided to send out her own Wurmple, wanting to show up May's. Jessie found Wurmple so irresistibly cute, though, that she didn't let it do anything, and instead just hugged it tightly as Ash and the gang watched, confused at how Jessie had acquired a Wurmple as well. Brock then realized that this battle was going to be a Wurmple versus Wurmple battle, and was excited to see who would win, since both of the Wurmples were exactly the same. Upon hearing Brock say this, though, Jessie got angry, stating that her Wurmple was nothing like May's, and as it was far cuter. She then realized that she didn't want to risk her Wurmple potentially getting fucked up and becoming less cute if it battled, so she stated that her Wurmple was too cute to even battle, as she immediately recalled it. Max was worried for all the other Pokemon, so he decided to send in his Poliwag to have it fight against Team Rocket. However, just like before, he only ordered a defensive attack, being a belly drum, or rather an attack that would just up stats. And this was when Kenny, of all people, the shy blue-haired boy, said that Max only using defensive moves and stat-boosting moves again could potentially make him lose, referencing the fact how Max was just about to lose his battle against Tommy before Team Rocket cut in. So, because of this, he advised Max to use an actual goddamn attacking move, specifically a water gun. And he also said that Max and Tommy should set aside their differences and work together to defeat Team Rocket, since Tommy's Magby had the type advantage over Cacnea. Max agreed, although Tommy hadn't said anything yet, and had Poliwag use water gun on Seviper, knowing that he had to go for Seviper, while Tommy went for Cacnea. Although Tommy didn't really want to help Max out, he also didn't want Max to take all the glory of victory for being the one to defeat Team Rocket, so he decided to oblige with what Kenny suggested, and helped out Max as he had his Magby use Flamethrower on Cacnea. Max was impressed by Tommy's skills, and spoke on how great of a trainer Tommy was, but Tommy merely turned away, not wanting to accept Max's compliment in front of him, although Tommy was secretly smirking behind Max's back, and because he did appreciate the compliment, he just didn't want to admit it. Seeing as how Seviper and Cacnea were both down, Ash realized that now would probably be a good time for him to try to Thunderbolt again to see if he could blast Team Rocket off. But Roxanne stopped Ash, stating that he should let all the kids have a shot and see if they could prove themselves, stating her confidence in especially Kenny, since Kenny knew what the fuck he was doing. Even though Roxanne practically had to physically restrain Ash to prevent him from helping out, Kenny did have everything under control, as he was able to gather Max, Tommy, and Anita together, and he explained his plan that he had come up with, which was Max was going to have Poliwag distract Team Rocket, while Tommy and Magby would use Flamethrower on the Wurmple robot to overheat it and destroy it. Max did his job first, of course, of distracting Team Rocket, as he had Poliwag use Water Gun, and Team Rocket just laughed, as they closed the doors of the Wurmple mech, just like they did with Pikachu, laughing that the Poliwag's Water Gun was doing just as much damage as Pikachu's Thunderbolt. Absolutely nothing. This was totally fine with Max, though, as he was merely creating the distraction, which had allowed Tommy and Magby to sneak to the back of the Wurmple robot, and they proceeded to use Flamethrower on it, just as Cacnea used Pin Missile on Poliwag, which Poliwag deflected by using a Protect. It took a few seconds of the Flamethrower, but soon, Team Rocket felt the floor of their Wurmple robot, which they were now standing on top of instead of inside the cockpit, was getting hot as fuck, and it was so hot, they began screaming and hopping, trying to not touch the hot roof of the Wurmple robot, only to then spot Tommy and Magby attacking the mech with Magby's Flamethrower. Just then, Kenny, who had planned for when the Wurmple robot would be destroyed, ordered none other than Anita to use her Pidgey to have use Wing Attack on the bag of Pokeballs to cut the bag free from the Wurmple robot and then set all the Pokeballs free afterwards, and Anita did so, commanding her Pidgey to use Wing Attack. With all the school's Pokeballs now free, the only thing left to do was deal with Team Rocket themselves, although this was appearing to be somewhat of an issue, since Magby's Flamethrower wasn't blowing up the Wurmple robot yet. So, Roxanne decided to take action finally, and called out her Geodude, having it use Rollout to destroy the mech, sending Team Rocket blasting off. As Roxanne apologized for butting into the battle, stating that she already saw the potential in her students, so she felt that she should help out. Anita, Max, and Tommy then all thanked Kenny for his awesome leadership, and also congratulated him for now being able to touch Pokemon, not being scared of them anymore, as he petted Magby and Poliwag, befriending them after realizing how helpful Pokemon could be, and how they weren't scary after all, and realizing that Magby and Poliwag weren't going to be very judgmental of him. As for Anita, after participating in this battle against Team Rocket with her Pidgey, she realized that Pokemon battling was actually cool after all, and began to appreciate it, now glad that she was enrolled in the school. As for Max and Tommy, they congratulated each other, admitting that they made a great team together, and that they shouldn't waste time fighting, and should instead combine each other's knowledge, since they were both top-tier students, making Roxanne pleased. Ash and the gang were also pleased to see that Max had actually made a new friend, and was also relieved to see that Tommy, despite being the hard-ass that he was able to befriend Anita and Kenny as well, not being rude to them anymore. So essentially all the drama within the group was now taken care of. Yay! Roxanne then recalled her Geodude, but not before Brock complimented it, stating that it reminded him of his Geodude back at the Pewter Gym, and overall just complimented how strong it was, and warned Ash that if Roxanne was going to be using her Geodude in their gym battle, then Ash would probably have a pretty tough time in the battle. Ash simply responded that he liked a tough challenge, and proceeded to challenge Roxanne yet again, asking if waiting another extra day was absolutely necessary, since all the kids seemed to be pretty well off right now, and Roxanne decided to agree to Ash's request, meaning that they were now going to have their gym battle tomorrow, not 2 days from now, since Roxanne was very eager to see what Ash was capable of, especially since he had come so far in the Johto League. Man, I cannot wait. It's finally time for another gym battle. It's been since, what, Claire? Fucking almost 50 episodes ago at this point.